Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
Gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee is recognized.
I thank the gentleman. I think it is appropriate to correct a number of statements that have been made on the floor. First of all, this is not the end. Director Mueller made this the beginning. When he concluded the report, he left a very large direction to the United States Congress. He recognized that he could not follow up because of policies at the DOJ regarding indictment in the process of the administration. And so the Congress, in its due diligence, took the responsibility not to target anyone, but to simply uphold the rule of law. In upholding the rule of law, we had an empty seat by Attorney General Barr, an empty seat by Mr. McGahn, an empty seat by Ms. Hicks, Ms. Donaldson, and we hope not an empty seat of the author of the report. So all this resolution does is authorize the committee to seek civil enforcement of its subpoenas against Attorney General Barr, requiring him to provide Congress with the key evidence underlying the Mueller report, as well as the unredacted report itself, and former White House counsel Donald F. McGahn, requiring him to provide documents and appear for testimony. He's not covered by executive privilege. In fact, executive privilege does not cover his duty is to the White House office of the general counsel, or the White House counsel's office, not to the individual office holder, the president. He has personal lawyers. And we didn't break the law. 6E, which is grand jury materials, our committee diligently said, let's work with the Department of Justice, go to court and decide what we can see. We are simply following this little book that many have died for, and that is the Constitution of the United States. And those words in the Declaration of Independence that said we all are created equal with certain unalienable rights of life and liberty in the pursuit of happiness. The American people would not want a nation that did not hold.
I yield the gentlelady an additional 1 minute.
Gentlelady is allocated an additional minute.
The American people would not want a Congress that turned its back on, frankly, the rule of law. And for those of us who had the special privilege of going to Normandy this past week, you got a great sense of pride, of the courage of Americans, the bravery of those young men. And all I can think of is how important it is for all of us to adhere to those wonderful principles. So again, there is no targeting here. This is not a way to do policy or legislation. We can fight that battle on the floor of the House. But if you read those volumes and end it in the last pages of Volume 2, you know that Director Mueller asked us to finish the task of looking into elements that he did not or could not in the underlying issues. Let me also say, as we do that, we do it forthrightly, because in 2020, we want to make sure that every American has a right to vote, and every American is not undermined by a foreign operative interfering and taking the election away from you. I support the resolution. We must stand for the rule of law. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentlelady from Arizona.